was on.
Well, because like they wanted to hide that they were take care of it.
We're all good? All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Sorenson. Hi, Chris. I'm the organizer of MadJS. Thanks for coming. We want to thank Flexion for sponsoring pizza and soda tonight. Yay. You want to say something about Flexion, Chris? Or are you just kidding?
It's got an F and an X in the middle.
You're giving me the stage. It's such a good idea.
No.
You know, I have to say this. You guys have been sponsoring the pizza for the past, I don't know, 9 out of 12 times or 18 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Eric doesn't even work there
still
anymore.
don't
He
know
quit.
what does Flexion do.
I like Flexion. I'll have you know.
I still don't know what Flexion does.
They're a consulting company.
Just consulting?
So they started out as like direct placement, you know, putting contractors in at the larger companies around town, and have kind of graduated to running project teams at various different companies in the area. So yeah, so all of us who work for Flexion and Associated are all basically JavaScript developers, and so Flexion, you know, besides really liking Eric and trying to bribe him to come back to us, which is really what it's about, is you know, always looking for more JavaScript people. So they're sponsoring food.
Eric,
What was that?
Eric is not bribing.
All right, moving on.
Aren't you?
We'll talk about that later. So yeah, we want to say thank you to Hani as well for recording all of our presentations. There's been a lot of them now, so they're all out on YouTube. If you just do a search for MadJS, they're out there. And yeah, the drones video is out there too, which Hani says is one of the best yet, because we had multiple angles and then they were merged together, so we got to do some.
Took 4 hours. Usually it takes 2 hours. So I spent 4 hours on it, and
Professional editing.
17 videos. There's 17 videos that we had to sync with. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's really awesome. It's so awesome that I shared it with my wife. Of course, she fell asleep.
I'm sure she appreciated it.
Stop Sundance.
So, yeah. So you can still get t-shirts and sweatshirts up on our store at screen.com/MadJS. There are a bunch of different styles and colors and stuff like that. And you can find out about all of these things at madjavascript.com. We have contact info there. We have our schedule. We have links to sponsors. We have the past videos. They all automatically update there. And we have our code of conduct that you can go and check out too.
Which Chris has broken like 3 times already.
That's why you put it up there.
Do we have any announcements? Job openings, stuff like that?
No turtles.
You said that last time. Anybody? Last call. All right. So, like I said, my name is Eric Sorenson. You can follow me on Twitter at dubharmonic, and you can check out my blog at dubharmonic.com. I am a front-end developer. I've been doing this for about 5 years. Before that, I was a Java developer. I've worked with jQuery and Backbone and Angular, and I've been doing MadJS for over 3 years now. We have over 700 members, by the way. That's kind of cool. Yeah, so I work at Primex Wireless right now. I work remotely, sometimes in Chicago, sometimes in Madison, on this large Angular app. And it's basically an Internet of Things platform. So we manage a bunch of little sensors that are all over the place. The sensors are constantly connected to the internet, and they measure things like temperature and humidity and pressure and CO2. And basically people use these to monitor really sensitive things like food or medications, things that are really expensive. So if they got out of their very specific temperature ranges, they would go bad and cost people lots of money. So the software alerts you when anything goes wrong, and it's a pretty cool app to work with. So today we're going to talk about EcmaScript 6. So the original presenter canceled, so you're going to get me instead. He couldn't be here today. So we're going to talk about EcmaScript Language Specification Edition 6. Kind of a mouthful. So EcmaScript is the specification that is implemented by JavaScript and JScript. So a lot of people don't know this, but Microsoft can't call their version of EcmaScript JavaScript because it's the whole Java piece in the name. So they call it JScript, and then EcmaScript just kind of encompasses.
Is that still around, JScript?
That's still what's in IE.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so ECMA stands for the European Computer Manufacturers Association. That is the standards body that they went to when they were trying to get a standards. Because back in the day when there was Netscape and there was IE, they were both trying to screw the other one over. And they went to a standards body to say, we're going to try to keep things from getting out of hand. And it seems to have worked pretty well. So EcmaScript 6 is also called EcmaScript 2015. It's been called EcmaScript Harmony. Had a lot of crazy names, but I think people are mostly calling it EcmaScript 6 now. But the idea is that every year there's going to be a new standard finalized. So everybody's going to have a year to get the new JavaScript features in, and then they're going to say we're done and going to standardize it, and then all the browser makers can implement it. And then if you didn't get in that year, you can maybe get in next year. So the deadline for this spec has already passed, and so the recommendation is frozen, and then it's going to become official on June 18th of 2015. So they say that that's when all the browser makers are going to be able to go crazy and implement all these features. A lot of browsers already have bits and pieces. And there are tons of compatibility charts out there that you can find. Just Google for it. So a little bit of history on EcmaScript. EcmaScript 3 was the era of IE 6 through IE 8. I don't remember exactly when the years were around there. EcmaScript 4 was Flash, basically. EcmaScript 5 is IE 9+. It's basically what all of us are using today. And I actually don't have a lot of experience with EcmaScript 6, mostly because it's so new. So if has anybody tried using it yet? Maybe a little bit. Tried playing with it? Yeah? Cool. So if you guys know about anything that you want to share with the group, it'd be cool if this was really more of a group discussion than me just, shouting at you. So yes, speak up if there's something that you can add. One important thing to note is that every time we get a new version of EcmaScript, everything has to be backwards compatible because there's so much code on the web already. And if you bring out a new browser, you can't break a bunch of old code. And some of it stays around for a really long time. So none of the warts of the language were fixed, but we did get a whole bunch of new stuff. And it's important to realize that while you don't have to use the EcmaScript 6 features, all these new frameworks like Angular 2 and Ember 2 are going to be using the new features to be able to save us keystrokes and make things faster and easier to understand. So even if you don't really want to get into it, it's probably going to be everywhere regardless. It's a little bit about browser support. Chrome is, of course, one of the leaders here, and the evergreen updates, the automatic evergreen updates, it's just going to keep getting more and more of the EcmaScript 6 features. And those are just going to come out automatically, and most users aren't even going to know that they have them. Things are just going to suddenly appear behind the scenes, and it's pretty much the same thing for Firefox. They're on those 6-week release cycles. And then there's IE. So IE, the name IE has been deprecated at this point. There will be no IE 12. Which, but Windows 10 is going to have a new browser that's codenamed Spartan, and that is still based on IE. And nobody really knows exactly where they're going with this. I'm really hopeful that they're going to just ditch the whole, we support old versions of stuff idea that has been around for so long. They say it's going to be inspired by the modern browsers like Chrome and Firefox, which makes me think that it's probably going to be evergreen and be updating all the time in the background, and all of these enterprises that hate change are just going to be okay with that. But I mean, yeah, IE11 is still going to be, but they're also going to ship the new one, which is hopefully the default. So.
Well, the IE the old IE browser is supposed to be mostly for enterprise. So if they have like mission critical applications that they haven't updated or won't bother to update it, they can still use.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be a separate browser entirely.
Right.
It's just separate from the Spartan code base.
So what I'm crossing my fingers for is that they basically drift away from, over the years, you know, IE
According to
11.
their technical blog, they pretty much kind of like started from scratch because a lot of CSS and JavaScript tricks kind of like avoid IE entirely, and so
Yeah.
to make sure that they would work across like most of the websites, they kind of like started from ground zero.
I hope it's true. I really hope it's true. And then there's I'm blanking on the name. Safari, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, Apple's being Apple here, and they're basically saying, no, we're not going to tell you anything, and you'll get what you get when you get it. And they're releasing little bits and pieces of EcmaScript 6, but we don't really know when they're going to be done with this or what their plans are. In the past, they've been pretty good. I mean, so hopefully.
What's Opera?
Opera? Opera is Chrome now. Yeah, Opera uses Blink.
There was a new browser released today, though, which is based on.
On what?
I forget the name, but I saw it. It's still in tech reviews.
Are you talking about that one from the Opera people that got mad when they went to Blink?
Yes. I saw I had one. The ones in Palmer Opera?
Yeah. Maybe I'll have a presentation on that.
That's also based on point. So
Oh, is it?
yeah, but they just decided that they were tired of taking away all the fun bits of view lines that put them back.
Huh.
Keep writing mail, bookmarks, widgets, stuff like
Really? All right. So what we just went through here is, you know, we don't have all of the EcmaScript 6 features yet. So why are we even talking about it right now? And the answer is that we can use preprocessors to take EcmaScript 6 code and convert it into EcmaScript 5 code, along with some polyfills, and then we can use it today. So kind of like the way that we would use CoffeeScript, which everybody loves, not as much as me. We can convert the stuff that we like into something we can use everywhere. So one of the most popular ones right now is the Tracer compiler from Google. This is mostly by Google for Google so that they can build Angular 2. And they put @script, is it on top of this or underneath it? It's basically in their preprocessor stack so that in the end they're using something that almost looks nothing like JavaScript, EcmaScript 5 right now. So you can use that one. And then the other one is Babel. And this was previously called 6 to 5. But the guys that run it, they said, well, you know, once all the browsers implement EcmaScript 6, then there's no reason for this project to exist, which would kind of suck because we have been working so hard on it. So they changed the name, and they're basically saying that every year they're just going to create, or they're going to add more features into the preprocessor so that it'll go back to, you know, from the new one to the current one. And then, you know, instead of 6 to 5, it'll be 7 to 6, and then 8 to 7. So we'll just keep going there. And it supports a lot of the big frameworks, like you can use React and JSX with it. You can use it for Node or io.js. It's got a lot of support. And the scary thing here is that we're all going to be completely distracted by the new shinies. And we're going to be really tempted to use these all over the place and go through our code and find out where we can use this stuff. But it's probably a good idea to keep in mind that just because we can do it doesn't mean that we should jam it into every single piece of our code. So think about whether you should. And I have some code demos next. Does anybody have anything to add to what I went over so far? Wow, that's small. Can everybody see that? Should I make it bigger? Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the different features of EcmaScript 6, some of the big ones. Can't go through all of them because they can't all be preprocessor / poly filled out. Some of them are just too native. So what I did here is I created a gulp file. And yeah, this is CoffeeScript, so bear with me. And I brought in the Plumber plugin, which basically keeps things running if there's an error. I brought in the Babel plugin so that I can do pre-processing in here. Brought in the Tracer plugin so that we can use Tracer as well. We can get output from both projects and look at what kind of code EcmaScript 6 turns into when it gets into EcmaScript 5. And then I have Express here for a little web server. Here is my web server. And then I have a watcher here that, here's the guts of it, is that we have a watcher that looks at all of the EcmaScript 6 files, and whenever we save one of them, we run it through Babel and we run it through Tracer and spit out the results into the public directory. Here's one for Babel and here's one for Tracer. So it'll work real time when we save stuff. And then we can run it too. We have an HTML file here. The first thing that we do is we bring in the polyfill. So this is the Babel polyfill. You're going to need to use this to use most of the features in here. And Tracer works almost the same way with the Tracer runtime. And they have support for adding this into AMD or CommonJS, anything that you use. So, first thing is arrows. If you use CoffeeScript, you're probably going to be familiar with this. It also exists in Java 8 and I think C#. Can anybody? Yeah, that's true. So in C#, does it do the same thing where it allows you to use this from the parent scope? Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, that's basically what it does, is it uses this from the parent. So instead of having to do, have you ever done a that equals this to get this from the parent in there? This is just syntactic sugar so that you don't have to do that anymore. And it was kind of funny when I was going through the results from this. I look at the code that results in Babel, and it's almost exactly what it does, is it creates an underscore this and assigns it, or assigns this to underscore this, and then just uses underscore this and the function on the inside.
That's not the same thing. The CoffeeScript transpiler does as well.
Is it?
Yes.
Fine.
I don't remember. I could probably add a CoffeeScript step in here too, and we could compare the three, but maybe next time. If you want to talk about CoffeeScript after this.
And I did have a question about the CoffeeScript file.
Yeah?
Where's all the semicons?
There. All right, another thing that drives a lot of us crazy about JavaScript, especially when we're starting, is that there was no block scope. So if you were trying to declare a variable inside of an if statement, it would be hoisted right up to the top of your function. And this, oh, it's just so annoying. So now, instead of just having var to declare a variable, we have let. And let is going to obey block scope, which is wonderful. So I think a lot of people now are saying just use let all the time instead of var, because it'll do what you expect, especially if you come from another language. And we can look at...
Is let short for something?
It's just a new keyword.
Yeah, I don't know why they call it let though. Is that what you're wondering?
Yeah, I mean, var is, a variable, you know. I don't know.
I think that was from the list where they do let variables. Good math.
Yeah. You do approve. Clear thing is less people
But, I mean, it's kind of annoying. Because you have all these words that are used for things already, and you can't change it. So, I mean, what would you call it? I thought about this for a while. Like, well, what would I do here? And they kind of had their backs against the wall when it came to using new keywords.
So would that potentially be a breaking feature of EcmaScript 6 is if you understand that is a variable name, also is it a restricted word before as well?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
Well, I guess in Chrome though it would already work.
Right.
You'd have to
That's the problem.
Get IE on there?
I do not.
Has a point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see that statement gets an underscore put in front of it here in Babel. And then if you look at tracer, it's a little... Yeah, so I went to this conference in Chicago a while back, and the overwhelming consensus seemed to be that the code created by these two preprocessors was much easier to read than the code created by the CoffeeScript preprocessor. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe some of the instances where we're doing stuff, it's easy to read, but I don't know. I'll let you make your own decisions there.
Have you read the code that CoffeeScript creates?
Yeah, I don't find it that bad. At least not any worse than this. Okay, so there are also a bunch of changes made to the objects that we get from the language itself. Stuff, like strings and arrays, objects, and if we just there's just too many to talk about all of them. But if you go to the Mozilla Developer Network and you look at the JavaScript reference, you can see all of these functions with the little experimental flask next to them. These are the ones that are new. So here we have array.observe. I think that's coming in EcmaScript 7, actually. But from and of and entries and fill, find index, find. I mean, how much have you wanted those? And usually we use external libraries like Lodash or underscore to get at stuff like that. But having them built in the language is going to be awesome.
There's some inconsistencies among how the browser the 6 version of those.
Yeah.
Underscore recently reverted when using native for loops for a performance increase and for better consistency across browsers.
So do you think that, just because...
For loops are faster than a lot of those functions on there.
Oh, you mean the ones that are built natively?
Yep.
So instead of using that, you still use it for loop if you're
No, I mean,
for performance?
with the tool in the toolbox, right? Use it
Yeah.
makes sense. But there's inconsistency across browsers.
They aren't done yet,
There's
either.
a little box in there.
Yeah. Technically, they're not supposed to be done. They're all in experimental mode. So another one that we get is classes, but this is a little deceptive because, like CoffeeScript, it's just syntactic sugar built over the top of EcmaScript 5 prototype chains. And so you get things like super and static methods and extends and constructors. And when you look at the EcmaScript 5 source, look at this. it's a little crazy. But you can pretty much, when you get down into the guts of it, you can pretty much see what's going on with the inherits function. Yeah.
So if you use this stuff in 6, and then it blows up on you, and you get some kind of a dump or something,
An error.
is it all going to be like 5 with prototypes and stuff? Or
Yeah.
So you're going to have to still know that stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah. You have to realize that there's just prototype chains under the hood here because there's no real magic as far as I can tell going on. And when you do compile these, you can create them with source maps so that if there's an error in the EcmaScript 5, you can go through it in the EcmaScript 6 code. But yeah, it's kind of like CoffeeScript in that respect, that sometimes the stuff that you're debugging doesn't look a whole lot like the code that you wrote. So, sorry?
That's for now.
Yeah, for now. And that should change. Yeah, you can see the tracer version of the classes looks a lot different, where they use polyfills to handle a lot of the guts there. Okay, next is constants. So we had var, and you could never we had var in EcmaScript 5, and you could never create a variable that could never be changed like you could in all of the other languages that we're used to. But now JavaScript has constants. So when I try to define a variable and then override it with something else, that basically creates a compile time error, or transpile error. So if I try to do that, and I am in the right directory. And oh, I'm not even running this. Sorry, that's not going to work. Anyway, there would be an error showing up there. You just have to trust me on that.
Well, in actual EcmaScript, is that going to like talk about it, or is there just no option?
I don't know. I would think that it would be a runtime error. Just throw something in the console. Has anyone tried that? No? Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. So, generators. Has anybody tried this before? I'm still a little fuzzy on exactly what these are doing. So correct me if I'm wrong, because this is still sinking in, but I think what generators do is, so the problem that they're trying to solve is that when you enter a function, that function is going to keep running until it's completely finished, and it's never going to give up the processor to anything else. So when you're writing JavaScript, there's an event loop running in the background, and things get added to the event loop, and then they're processed, and then it goes on to the next thing and the next thing. And sometimes you can have a really long running function, and that can just hog all of the resources. And sometimes you want other things going on at the same time. And since JavaScript runs in one thread, one process, that can, I mean, you just can't get any other work done. So what a generator will do is at certain points of the function, it'll yield and then allow something else to get some processor time. And then when everything else is done, or basically control is given back to the generator, it just keeps going. So you could even have a situation where you would want to be running a function constantly, but you would also want other things to happen in the browser. Anybody have anything to add? Yeah?
Well, also the generators are used because if, like, you want this, like, to process a large block of things, you don't, sometimes you don't want to load that all into memory. So you have a generator that so you can generate, so you can physically say .next and have that one at a time instead of having to have a whole array or iterator at one time. You can just go and use the constant amount of memory instead of having to use a whole chunk to get a whole collection at one time.
Well, you didn't mention this iterator.
Yeah.
This is an iterator.
Yeah, that's what's happening here.
Call it explicitly.
Yeah.
Generator. When you can then call back into that function and pass it a message, so you can make coroutines.
Yeah, there's message passing there, right? Where things can go back and forth. Yeah.
There's also actually a library that uses generators to like do CSP inside of JavaScript.
Using what?
Communicating sequential what the godas.
Oh, okay.
They implemented that in JavaScript using generators. You can actually do that where using the yields passing back and forth between the functions to actually do CSP and like asynchronous processing that godas.
Cool. The Node framework?
Next-gen Express.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else to add to that? And this is one thing that is usable today. So there's the code that's created. It's kind of messy. And let's see. Here's Tracer's version.
Very messy too.
Yeah. So then we were already talking a little bit about iterators. This is a concept that a lot of other languages have too, like Java has this, where basically you're going to get an object out of the iterator, an object that has done and a value. And you can just keep calling next on something, and it'll spit out whether it's done and give you a value. And what's kind of cool about this is that you can implement whatever you want behind the scenes. And, I mean, most of the time we're just using something special like an array, something simple, but it doesn't have to be that simple anymore. Let's see. Take a look at the, yeah, see, it's more messy stuff here. Yep. Okay, loops. So this is another thing that came from EcmaScript and other places. We're using for something of something else. So for market of scores, and we just run through this array and spit out all of the different values. And this is just another really good example of something that does almost exactly what you would expect, but is written in ES5 with a whole bunch of stuff that is kind of hard to read. This is one that I think is actually easier to read in EcmaScript when you compile it, because it would just be a regular for loop. But, so, any questions on that one? And we now have maps and sets. So a set is just like a collection without duplicates, and a map has key-value pairs. We also have weak maps and weak sets. So what that does is basically doesn't bump up the reference counter. So if something isn't referenced anywhere else in your app and it's just in the set or the map, it's going to get garbage collected. So that basically keeps memory from leaking. So if you reference something in a set or a map, it's not going to stay around forever.
Did you say it does not bump up, or it does?
If it's in the weak map or the weak set, it does not bump up the reference counter. I mean, logically.
So once it's out of scope, it'll get garbage collected.
Even if it was in the map or the set, yeah.
Maps are supposed to be a lot more performant than the object, too.
Yeah?
So they need more performant.
Cool. Because, yeah, we would normally just use basic object notation to do all those things.
Why are they adding that, right? Because
Yeah.
we've got objects.
Do they got objects only have strings for keys? But you can't use,
I think that's true.
yeah, that's for just because not to use anything as a key.
Right. Yeah, there's also a new primitive called a symbol that you can use as a key. And it seems to be just basically like a string that you declare it as a symbol, and then it's a symbol and not a string. I'm not really sure.
There's some significance to that, but
Yeah,
I can talk
Yeah.
symbols in Ruby, and I'm guessing they borrowed it. There's only one symbol in the whole process, so it saves. So say you have a symbol called my map or my symbol. That symbol only grab memory for that single instance, and it gets used everywhere. And it's useful because you want to say, hey, this thing, pass it on as a key, and you use it a gazillion times.
Right. So that's like a pointer then, basically?
Well,
Let's say if you use a string, right, and you're comparing two properties, or is it a symbol the same versus a string? You're comparing a string or a symbol check. It's just, is this pointing the same spot in memory, right? So it's a lot faster.
and it conserves memory. It conserves memory. I mean, that's the purpose of the symbols in Ruby. I'm not sure why they're using. I'm guessing.
And when you convert these to EcmaScript 5, I think what's happening here is they just use, what's the word I'm going for, polyfills for these, and it looks almost exactly the same. Yeah, actually it looks really nice, I think. And then I think the best thing about EcmaScript 6 is the module system. We've been without an official module technique for as long as JavaScript has existed, and it's been one of the biggest weaknesses of the language, I think. So we've had a lot of people try to create standards to solve this problem. There's AMD, asynchronous module definition, which is used by Require and Dojo. And then there's CommonJS, which is used by Node, and Browserify, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm not even going to go into. But all of that should be able to go away eventually because it's all built into the language now. And it's really straightforward, right? It looks like most of the other languages that we've been coming from, like Python or Ruby, or even Java, where you import something as a variable name from a file. And then you export whatever you want from the module that you're working in with a name. You know, it's pretty simple, and you just arrange your JavaScript files like that, and you can use bits and pieces between them.
So you need a file called maps.js somewhere in there?
Yep. Yep. But it's kind of messy to use right now because you need to convert this into either AMD or CommonJS or something else in order to get it to work in the wild. So I don't think that this is really going to... Yeah?
I'm just wondering if it's going to be supported by browsers to do asynchronous requests for external files. You know?
I don't know the answer to that. I would hope so.
There's a async attribute for the script tag coming up.
Yeah, I think that's in Chrome already, even, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, I don't think anybody's actually implemented all of this yet, so we don't know exactly what we're going to get. But the great thing is, the promise says, not to overload that term, but that everybody's going to use the same modules. So if you create a library and you want to share it with people, you don't have to create a bunch of versions of that library to be compatible with everybody's environment of JavaScript, because that is just, it's actually a really hard problem to solve and get everything working for everybody. And I think, yeah, we've even had a presentation on that. Somebody trying to get their library working everywhere. But it should be extremely simple once this all gets into all the browsers.
There's also ES module polyfill, or ES module system polyfill, right?
Yes, that's true. Right, what kind of sucks about that is that not everybody uses it, and if not everybody is using the same module system, the ability to use other modules is diminished drastically. Yeah. Oh, does anybody have anything else about modules?
Can you use modules right now with these two, with the tracer and the...
You can if you use plugins for it to turn them into something else. I didn't actually implement that. I tried, and it wound up being a little time consuming. I went down the rabbit hole and realized that I was getting too excited about it, and I needed to step away from the keyboard. So default parameters. This is another. It's not really that big of a deal, but it's kind of nice, where you can define the default value in your function signature. So if y is not passed in, you'll get 12 by default. And it looks exactly like you would expect it to. I mean, how many people have written pretty much this exact line, where you say, use this, if it's defined otherwise, give it this value.
So what if you do give a long list of parameters instead of default the last one in the first three or no? I mean, is there any way we could call one function and make up that besides just passing those? Right, you know what I mean? Because the functions call you know what I mean? There's no way to specify which parameters still you're setting it to when you set up the function. Because it's still not straightforward.
I feel like I saw an article about name parameters in JavaScript, but I don't know if I was dreaming that. Does anybody else know if I was dreaming that? Yeah. That's kind of scary if that's true.
JavaScript features. You are replicants, sir.
Yeah, another one is native promises. So promises allow you to do asynchronous tasks without creating the pyramid of doom. Yeah. So this is all boiling around the then function. So you do this, then this, then this, then this, and you don't get this nasty callback pyramid of doom. And what's really kind of been crummy about promises so far is, well, what's great about it is that the community created it because the community needed it, and it caught on, and a lot of people started using it. But what wasn't so great is that there were a lot of differing implementations of it. So if you use Angular, you're going to use the Q library. There, what are the other ones? I know jQuery uses it, and kind of. But it doesn't really stick to the spec, and that sucks because it's the most widely used version of the promises library. Oh yeah, Bluebird. Yeah. So hopefully we won't have to use any of those anymore. We can just use the native one, and then it'll be the same everywhere, and all of these library makers can just use the native one, and we won't have to worry about some kind of strange dependency hell situation.
Do you know if it's Angular 2 programming?
I would imagine it is. Yeah, because they are using Tracer, which, let's see, if we look at the output, yeah, it just has a polyfill for promises. And the last one I have on the list is template strings. So this is something that CoffeeScript also had, and it just gives you the ability to define a string with backticks instead of single or double quotes, and then inject your variables directly into the string itself, and it'll interpolate the value into the rest of the string. And the results look exactly like you would expect them to. Oh yeah, multi-line too. That's a good point. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I think the version that I'm using does, but if you want to, you can get one that respects module systems and use dependency injection and all that stuff. So that was the last example that I had of EcmaScript 6 features. Is there anything that I didn't hit? Yeah? Yes. Well, I know you can't use it right now in... No, you can't polyfill it. That's really why I didn't look at it too much. Proxies? Do you want to take this one? Destructuring. Yeah, that is another good one. You want to talk about that one?
Destructuring. That's not hard to talk about. It's easier to show. It allows you to.
Let's see, I think they might have.
Yes. You're only worried about some of the hidden in and out. You don't have to get every configuration necessarily to get the data out. You just make something that's a similar shape. Yeah. There's no mic.
I'm worried that I'm going to be barraged by personal text messages. If I connect. No, that's not why. It's probably because the dog did something. How do I do that? I don't even know how to.
Yeah, you gotta stop the dog from using your computer.
I'm not even going to get into it. It is on. Isn't it? Oh, it is. It's enabled while mirrored. That is so smart.
This is just Eric learning lessons, because when we used to have hangouts and stuff, I would send messages while I was presenting.
That's one way to put it. Okay. It's the rest and spread you're talking about, right? Destructuring. Yeah. This is a really great place to learn about all the different things in ES6, by the way. The Babel site. Yeah, they do have proxies. Yeah, I think this is just an implementation of the wrapper design pattern, isn't it? Where you cover something else with your own code and pass through when you want to and intercept it when you want to. You could do that on wrapper. I mean, isn't that what they... Oh, well, yeah. Any other comments? Do you know what it's called? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't look at this one much. So you're saying they just took a bunch of stuff off of the object and then put it... Yeah, one of the more difficult parts about researching this is sometimes it's hard to tell why this is useful, you know? Like, I understand what you're saying, but who cares? Maybe. I'm not really sure why, but... Yeah, just because... Yeah. Is that movie too old for everybody to get that reference, by the way? There it is. No, that's the wrong movie.
Is it really?
God.
All right.
I'm not used to
Yeah, it's the same movie.
It's the same movie.
You reference that scene almost every week.
That's right, because Jeff Goldblum was in that too. Inject the virus into the.
Light has now become clear to me.
It's a good thing the aliens didn't have Windows 95.
He uses Mac to.
Yeah.
Was it a Mac that he used?
Yeah, in a Mac. The funny thing is they had a progress bar that says negotiating with hosts.
What's the name of that one?
Independence Day.
Yeah.
1994.
Somewhere around there, yeah. It's a serious blockbuster. All right, let's change directions just a little bit. Yeah.
That Babel page had classes. Can you click on that? Just out of curiosity, what do they? So they're adding what do they call it? Classical inheritance in addition to programmable.
It looks like it, but it's not. That's what's dangerous about it, is that it's not actually classical inheritance.
Okay.
Which is why I asked you, and it was just kind of a dump or something. Because I don't know about prototypes.
I mean, it looks nicer. Right. That's really
Just But then when somebody comes from another language and they're looking at your code that had classes and they're expecting something to work.
Job security.
The magic. It's a silly thing. Oh, yeah. Did we not have that at one point? Great. I'm real proud of you. Sorry.
We've never had a dojo presenter.
No, he did it once.
He did?
Yeah.
I did a couple of dojo ones back in the day.
Fortunately, technology back then is still there's no new releases.
It's mature, stable technology.
It is an IBM product ultimately. Yes.
Enterprising.
It's enterprising.
Tried and true. So one thing I wanted to just change gears off of EcmaScript 6 and just share something that I made in my spare time while I was on vacation. Have a good time? Yeah. So I've been playing around a lot with the web audio API, and I know some of you guys have already played with it also. But in the last few years, I've noticed that it's really started to calm down. I mean, when you were working with it in the beginning, after it had just come out, there was just so much turbulence and there was so many differences between browsers that it was hard to get something that would work everywhere. But now I think it's kind of at a point where it'll work. The same code base will work on all the major browsers and even on mobile devices reliably with decent performance. And I started playing around with this, and I realized that with just basic JavaScript and no frameworks at all, you can make some real music straight out of the browser without loading any samples or anything like that. you have the ability to create sine waves, square waves, saw waves, and white noise, and then use high and low filters on those, and then use timing to control when everything happens. And that basically gives you everything that they had to make music in the late 70s with synthesizers. And you have the microphone that you can control, and also your camera with, I'm not going to be singing. But, I'm sorry, Dave, I don't get that reference. Sorry. So, are there any other musicians, or like, really, yeah, cool. So I was thinking, we could just, if anybody else is interested, I was going to try putting together like a little EP or something like that of really what is probably going to be really lame synthesizer music, but then you can just put it in GitHub and people could fork it and then do a remix project with just raw JavaScript. And I don't know if anything like this has been done before, but I'm going to start putting stuff out there, and if anybody else is interested in trying to mess around with it or putting their own stuff out, I would be up for that. So,
why do your frequencies have color values, Eric? That's not right.
Color values? Oh, down here. Okay, so I'll show you what I did. There's this app. I've tried making several versions of this over the last time. What was that?
I said you were just marking where the brown note is.
Oh, yeah. That's the next step. So, everybody stay in your seats. See all those speakers on the ceiling? So there's this app for iOS that came out just after the iPhone was released, where basically what you do is you tap on the screen, and with each tap, it makes this tone, and this circle expands slowly, and it's very relaxing. And I always thought I could code this. I know I could code this in the browser, and it turned out that when I thought I could do it, I could not do it because all of the technologies I needed would require Flash, and I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to stoop that low. So now you can do it. I created it a few times. Once I did it with samples. Another time I did it with another library that did some really crazy bit manipulation. But now everything's there in the browser itself. So I created this. I'm not sure the speakers are on, but so it's exactly like the iPhone app works, and it works anywhere. And all of those sounds are generated by JavaScript itself and then sent through a compressor. It's kind of cool the way that the Web Audio API works. You actually have modules just like you would on a rack, and you take plugs and you put them in different modules, and you can actually remove them in real time and then move them around. You could, yeah. So that's why the colors are in there, because each note has a different color. And this is just a canvas tag, and I'm waiting for the next frame and just drawing a new circle whenever the notes come up. And you can see this is CoffeeScript, so it's going to be a little bit more terse, but it's not a lot of code to make that happen. So making music, I don't think it would really require that much code either. So yeah, that's all I had on that. I'm going to start putting stuff out on GitHub, and I'll post it to the Meetup group when I get something going. I'll stop it.
You play the music every night now, Eric?
We'll talk about that. Yeah. So that's all I had. Anybody want to talk about anything else? So next month is React, right? Awesome. All right, so I think we're going to go over to the Capitol Tap House if anybody's interested in getting a drink. Thanks for coming. I did.
You did, huh?
Yeah,
Was
that's
there.
where I met Honey.
Honey was gone by the time I got there.
Yeah?
So.
Yeah, I